So what I'd like to do now is build on what Simon has said and reflect on what we're trying to achieve with the recommended list. Stephen, right at the beginning, alluded to the BBRO website changes, and one of the key areas that helps with that is trying to simplify and help you guide through choosing your varieties of the future, because a large sheet of A4 people or a PDF is not that easy to work through. So what I'd like to demonstrate are some of the new changes, and encourage you when you get home tonight is to go and have a look at your own BBRO website and look at the opportunity once I've guided you through some of those options. Simon reflected on this and took a slightly wider perspective, but what I'd like to say is yield potential in the UK with the genetics that we have continues to increase. You know, when you take that 20-year period, it's been fundamental in the yields that you've generated on farm to make sure you've got a profitable crop. A lot of that is the genetic potential is thanks to the breeders and the efforts that they put into place for that. Clearly, there have been some challenges. The loss of the neonicotinoids in 2018 and the virus yellows epidemic in 2020 led to some significant yield implications. And both in 2022 and again last year in 2025, drought conditions and challenges of beet moth that you'll hear more from in the next presentation by Alistair and Eleanor show that we need to be constantly adapting and making sure we're finding the solutions that you can then take back on farm. But I think as an industry, we've been really quite adaptable and able to produce the varieties that you need. And if you just reflect back on the tools that we have had, you know, Rhizomania came into the UK, I remember it well, in 1987. At that point, it was potentially going to destroy the UK sector. The press cuttings at the time were all doom and gloom, but as an industry, we were able to ensure that we were getting and breeding into varieties, the resistance genes. So by 2012, every single seed that you put into your field, and continues to be the case, is able to give Rhizomania resistance. Now, we're all virologists now post-COVID, and clearly it's really important that we continue to evolve and monitor those strains, because what we have seen is more aggressive strains. But to the credit of the breeders, they've been able to introduce more resistance genes and give us that stronger resistance, particularly to the AYPR strain, which you see on the recommended list, to give you that resistance for those farms that need it. That is also now the case for beet cyst nematode. Over that journey of 15 years, the varieties now have strong tolerance to beet cyst nematode. The best varieties also sit at the top of the list with beet cyst nematode tolerance. Most varieties have a range of tolerance or resistance to the various diseases, the foliar diseases, including now specific varieties for Cercospora. And we've also seen more recently the advent of ALS technology, giving you potentially, if you need it, some flexibility, particularly for weed beet issues, the use of that herbicide-resistant sugar beet. And post-neonicotinoid, we needed time to be able to adapt and find the solutions. What is really quite exciting to me is just how we're starting to see on the recommended list varieties coming with tolerance or partial resistance to the yellowing viruses. And that's a great example for one of our trials where we're starting to test and continue to evaluate, and now seeing coming to commercial reality, so that you can now select varieties to be able to, contend with the challenges. Hopefully we then remove the challenge or in the absence of virus, and see the yield progression of those varieties increase in the absence of virus. But when you buy a box of seed and put it into your drill and then put it into the field, hopefully in a few weeks' time, just reflect just for a few moments about how that seed has got there, because it's a journey that probably has taken 15 years with the variety you've selected, because the breeders need to be able to do their appropriate selections. There's all the crossing, the seed production, and all the nuances that go behind plant breeding that can take up to 10 to 15 years. So they may be working on varieties today that probably won't become in a field to about 2038, 2040, and that's quite an incredible, it's one of the complexities of sugar beet and potentially some of the challenges, and potentially where the value of gene editing comes into to speed up some of these traits. Once it's gone through that process, then there is another stage before it comes into the BBRO recommended list trial process. It has to go through a variety list trials process to make sure it's distinct and approved via AFA. That can take 2 or 3 years to do, and then linking it through to the BBRO recommended list. Because all varieties need to be distinct, uniform and stable, as well as satisfactory for value and cultivation. Those trials are conducted by the breeders and NIAB with an independent assessor to make sure is above board and scrutinised, and that information then feeds through now into the BBRO recommended list. As I said, can take 2+ years. Once it's actually got the sign-off for that through the VL process, then they come through to the BBRO annual recommended list trial program. So each year we now have 10 treated recommended list trials. They will have the best agronomic practice. But in addition, we will have 4 untreated trials each year where we don't apply fungicides to look at the genetic potential to see the differences between varieties. And we also now do 4 treated trials that are lifted late after Christmas in that January window to look at the performance of the varieties in that later lift window opportunity. And that's also alongside the early sown bolter trials that will start to be drilled hopefully in about, now the 10th of February. The window for those is the 18th of February through to the 5th of March. And that gives us an indication to make sure that we are selecting the most robust varieties that you need on farm that are not potentially going to bolt. So there's an awful lot of trialing that goes on behind the scenes. Stephen Aldis and the BBRO trials team are constantly looking for sites, taking it right through the season, and we've just finished lifting all those trials. There's no real downtime because we're then straight into the next season and ready to take forward the 2026 recommended list program. I thought it was an opportunity as well just to reflect on the varieties that came onto the recommended list in 2026. They were announced in February last year to give you an indication, and some of you get that early sight of being able to grow some of those because if you remember, and you would have made your seed selection from that, there were 6 new varieties that came onto the list. As I said, we released that on the 21st of February, giving you an opportunity to have that information available. And we also had an additional trait claim added to a year 2 variety as well. So those varieties that we saw last year, which you'll be growing in 2026 alongside the others that were still on the recommended list. We had 3 from Cess Van der Haaf, you had Antler and Gadwall, conventional varieties, and the additional Hoopoe variety that gave you beet cyst nematode tolerance in field. There was the further variety from Hilshog, again from the Cess Van der Haaf stable, with Aslan. And then KWS brought in 2 new varieties. Generosa KWS had Virus Yellow's claim, and Smart Nelda was the first variety that gave you both beet cyst nematode and ALS as a stacked trait for those growers who needed that. And as I said, Struber had ST Tweed on the list, but what we were able to do with the various data packages was able to address and add the Virus Yellow's trait claim for that particular variety. It gave you that as a 2026 recommended list. That's not easy to look at, but it has all the information, and that's probably what you made your decisions over in the farmhouse kitchen table last year. But what we've been trying to do is make sure that the recommended list remains fit for purpose for the future. And actually, we are introducing some changes to that format that I'd just like to allude to today, because rather than just testing genetic, we appreciate the fact that you actually grow a package which includes the variety plus the seed treatments. So from this point onwards, and we started in 2025, we're now taking the varieties with the different seed package pellets, priming and pelleting technology to make sure that we can build that into the performance and the recommended list. It needs some analysis in slightly different ways, but that is how the recommended list will be demonstrated into the future. So we'll take the VL data first and then build in the recommended list data. So just to give a reflection, before that change, the test would have been the genetics with no priming, with a prescribed bland pellet. And if needed, we would have double drilled and then gapped trial plots. And all this then manifested itself into the recommended data set. What's happened from 2025 onwards is, yes, we still have the genetics from the seed houses, but this time there's the opportunity to introduce a commercial priming technology alongside commercial pellet or pellets, and are now all drilled to a stand. There'll be no gapping of those trial plots to reflect the performance of that package that you're putting onto farm. And that now brings in the new recommended list data for the future lists that we will be producing for you to make sure you've got the right information at the right time to deliver on farm. So there were several changes to the seed account as well. So there's also the opportunity post-VL approval through the AFA system to take candidate varieties that are on their RL and purchase them in the year that they come into the recommended list trial program. Breeders have their own pellet, or the opportunity to use external pellets is now available as long as they're commercially approved. And varieties will remain on the list for slightly longer because once they are removed post-committee, they will be available for one further year after coming off that list. And as I'm sure we're all aware from the decisions that were taken 18 months ago, seed is now available direct from breeder or through distribution. But as Stephen alluded to at the beginning of the conference this morning, BBRO has updated its website. It's making life a lot easier for lots of reasons, and having that ability to search it, to find information, hopefully you will find very valuable. But it actually comes to life when it's there for your recommended list. So what I'd just like to take you through is some screen grabs, because as I said, that's what you're used to, and that's not easy to digest. But hopefully now when you go through to the recommended list chart, you can actually see in the in-season advice, the recommended list for 2026 tab is there. Click on that, and that will take you through to the interactive list for this current season, which will be updated soon for the next recommended list. And what you're able to do is use the various filters and compare varieties to take you through that journey. So for example, Stephen showed this earlier, you can download and select a filter. This has all the traits available at the moment. For this one, we've clicked on Beet Cyst Nematode. That gives you all the varieties with that particular trait claim, and you can then compare them cheek by jowl without all the other noise out there. But what you can then also do is, if you're particularly interested in the year-by-year data as well, you can click on those varieties that you're interested in and then take that through. And what you can then do is see the year-by-year data. So if you're interested in how it's performed over the 3 years, in addition to actually that top-line figure, this simplifies the process to be able to do that, and hopefully gives you that more detailed, less cluttered approach to be able to take it forward into the future. So I've used the 2026 as an example. The 2027 list is imminent. We will announce very, very soon that will become available hopefully by the end of this month, and we'll make sure that we flag that and it will be available, and we'll let you know through the bulletins and other sources. So hopefully that's been of value. That's given you a guidance of what we're doing, the importance and the changes of the recommended list. I'm here after the presentations if you've got any further questions to ask about the recommended list. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Alistair and Eleanor, who are going to update you on all things beet moth. Thank you very much.